Marcus Thompson pulled his jacket tighter as the rain poured down on the empty parking lot outside the grocery store. The weather had turned nasty quickly, and he was already running late to pick up his 8-year-old daughter Emma from her after-school program. His old Honda's windshield wipers struggled against the heavy downpour, squeaking with each pass across the glass. As a single father working 2 jobs, Marcus rarely had time for anything beyond the essentials. His days started at 5 a.m. with his maintenance job at the local hospital, followed by an evening shift at the warehouse. Between work and caring for Emma, every minute was accounted for. Tonight was no different. He had exactly 15 minutes to grab groceries before the store closed, then race across town to get Emma. He was fumbling with his keys when he heard it, a sound that made him stop dead in his tracks. Someone was crying, not just sniffling, but deep, heart-wrenching sobs that cut through the sound of the rain. Marcus looked around the nearly empty parking lot, squinting through the darkness and precipitation. There, sitting on a concrete barrier near the store's entrance, was a woman in scrubs. Her shoulders shook as she wept, completely soaked by the rain. She seemed oblivious to everything around her, lost in whatever grief had consumed her. Most people would have kept walking, minded their own business, but Marcus wasn't most people. His mother had raised him better than that. "Excuse me, miss, are you okay?" Marcus called out, jogging toward her despite the rain soaking through his thin jacket. The woman looked up, startled. Even in the dim parking lot lighting, Marcus could see she was young, probably in her late 20s, with kind eyes that were now red and swollen from crying. Her dark hair was plastered to her face and her nursing scrubs clung to her small frame. She wore a hospital ID badge that read, Sarah Chen, RN, Pediatric Unit. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, quickly wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I didn't mean to. I should probably go." She started to stand, but Marcus gently held up his hand. "Hey, it's okay. You don't have to apologize for being human." "Bad day?" Something in his voice, perhaps the genuine concern or the way he didn't seem to be in a hurry despite the circumstances, made Sarah pause. She sank back down onto the concrete barrier, and the tears started flowing again. "Bad doesn't even begin to cover it," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. Marcus glanced at his watch. He was supposed to pick up Emma in 10 minutes, but something told him this woman needed help more than he needed to stick to his schedule. He pulled out his phone and quickly sent a text to Mrs. Rodriguez, the program coordinator, explaining he'd be a few minutes late. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but sitting out here in the rain isn't going to help anything," Marcus said, shrugging off his jacket and holding it over both of them as he sat down beside her. "I'm Marcus, by the way." "Sarah," she replied, accepting the shelter of his jacket gratefully. "And you're right, this is pretty stupid. I couldn't go home. I couldn't face my empty apartment after what happened today." Marcus waited patiently, sensing that Sarah needed to talk but wasn't sure how to begin. In his experience, both as a father and as someone who had faced his own share of hardships, sometimes people just needed someone to listen. "I'm a pediatric nurse," Sarah continued, her voice steadier now. "I've been working at Children's Memorial for 3 years. I thought I was good at my job, thought I was making a difference. But today..." Her voice broke again. "Today was different?" Marcus prompted gently. Sarah nodded, struggling to find the words. "There was this little boy, Tommy. He's been my patient for weeks. Leukemia, 7 years old, same age as my nephew. His parents, they're good people, but they're so young, so scared. I've been working extra shifts, doing everything I could to help Tommy get better, to help his family cope." The rain continued to fall around them, but neither seemed to notice anymore. Marcus found himself drawn into Sarah's story, feeling the pain in her voice. Tommy's been responding well to treatment. His parents were so hopeful, so grateful. They kept thanking me, telling me I was like family to them. I started to believe that maybe I really was making a difference, that maybe this job was my calling. Sarah paused, taking a shaky breath. But today, everything went wrong. Tommy had a reaction to his medication, a severe one. It happened so fast. One minute he was laughing at a cartoon on his tablet, and the next, She couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus felt his heart sink. He thought about Emma, about how precious and fragile life could be, especially for children. I'm so sorry, Sarah, that must have been devastating. The worst part is I keep thinking about what I could have done differently. Maybe if I had noticed the signs sooner. Maybe if I had been more careful with the dosage. Maybe if I had. Sarah's words tumbled out in a rush. Each one weighted with guilt and self-recrimination. Sarah, stop, Marcus said firmly but kindly. You can't blame yourself for everything that goes wrong. Sometimes bad things happen despite our best efforts. But his parents trusted me. They looked at me like I was some kind of hero, like I had the power to save their son. And I failed them. I failed Tommy. The tears came harder now, and Marcus could feel the depth of her anguish. As they sat together in the rain, two strangers brought together by circumstance and grief, Marcus realized that this encounter was about more than just offering comfort to a crying woman. There was something about Sarah's pain that resonated with him. Something that reminded him of his own struggles as a single parent trying to do right by his daughter. He looked at his phone again. Emma would be wondering where he was. But somehow, he knew this moment was important, not just for Sarah, but for both of them. Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed Mrs. Rodriguez directly. Hi, it's Marcus Thompson. I'm running about 30 minutes behind for Emma pickup. Emergency situation. He looked at Sarah, who was trying to protest that he shouldn't change his plans for her. No, it's fine. I'll pay the late fee. Thank you. You don't understand, Sarah said, standing up abruptly. You have a daughter to pick up. You shouldn't be sitting here with a stranger who can't get her act together. This is exactly the problem. I'm so wrapped up in my own failures that I'm making other people's lives difficult too. Sit down, Sarah. Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. My daughter, Emma, is safe and warm inside that building. She's probably having a blast staying late because she gets to help Mrs. Rodriguez with the younger kids. You, on the other hand, are falling apart in a parking lot during a thunderstorm. Which situation do you think needs more immediate attention? Despite everything, Sarah almost smiled at that. You don't even know me. For all you know, I could be completely crazy. Are you? Marcus asked with a slight grin. Probably, Sarah admitted, sinking back down beside him. I mean, who sits in the rain having a breakdown over a job? Normal people go home, eat ice cream, watch Netflix, and move on with their lives. Normal people also don't spend their days taking care of sick children, Marcus pointed out. That takes a special kind of person. The kind who cares so much it hurts. Sarah was quiet for a moment, processing his words. How do you know what to say? Are you a therapist or something? Marcus laughed, a sound that surprised them both with its warmth. Hardly. I'm a maintenance guy at the hospital. Probably the same one where you work, actually. And I stock shelves at a warehouse. But I've been a single dad for 5 years now. And let me tell you, that's taught me more about crisis management than any degree could. Single dad? Sarah asked, her attention shifting from her own problems for the first time since he'd found her. Emma's mom left when Emma was 3. Marcus explained simply. Decided parenthood wasn't for her. I won't lie, those first couple years were rough. I had no idea what I was doing, and I made about 1,000 mistakes trying to figure it out. Sarah studied his face in the dim parking lot light. There was something steady about him, something that suggested he'd been through his own struggles and come out stronger. That must have been terrifying, being responsible for another person's entire world. It was, Marcus admitted. Still is some days. Every decision I make affects her future. Every mistake I make, she pays for too. The pressure is enormous. But you kept going, Sarah observed. What choice did I have? She needed me. Simple as that. He paused, considering his next words carefully. The thing is, Sarah, I bet Tommy's parents don't see you as someone who failed their son. I bet they see you as someone who cared about him enough to fight for him every single day. Fresh tears started flowing down Sarah's cheeks, but these felt different somehow, less desperate, more healing. He was such a sweet kid, always asking about my day even when he was feeling terrible from the chemo. His parents brought me coffee every morning because they noticed I looked tired. They treated me like family. That's because you were family to them, Marcus said softly. When someone takes care of your child with that level of dedication, they become family. Trust me on that one. I just keep thinking about all the other families I've worked with, all the children I've cared for. What if I'm not cut out for this? What if I'm in the wrong profession? Sarah's voice was small, vulnerable. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, thinking about his own moments of doubt as a parent, as a provider, as a man trying to build a good life for his daughter. Can I tell you something that might sound crazy? Sarah nodded. I think the people who question whether they're doing enough, whether they're good enough, whether they belong, those are exactly the people who should be doing the job. The people who never doubt themselves, who never worry about their impact, those are the ones I'd be concerned about. That does sound crazy, Sarah said. But there was a hint of a smile in her voice. Emma went through a phase when she was 6, where she was convinced I was the worst dad in the world, Marcus continued. I wouldn't let her eat cookies for dinner. I made her go to bed at a reasonable hour. I insisted she do her homework before watching TV. One night she told me she wished she had a different daddy, one who would let her do whatever she wanted. Ouch, Sarah winced. That had to hurt. It did. I spent the whole night wondering if I was being too strict, if I was damaging her somehow. But then I realized something. If I didn't care about her well-being, her words wouldn't have hurt so much. The fact that I was questioning myself meant I was invested in being the best parent I could be. Sarah absorbed this, seeing the parallel he was drawing. So you're saying my guilt and self-doubt might actually be proof that I care about my patients? I'm saying someone who doesn't care doesn't lose sleep over their mistakes. They don't sit in parking lots crying over children they couldn't save. They clock out and forget about work until the next day. Marcus adjusted his jacket, making sure Sarah stayed dry. The fact that Tommy's situation is tearing you apart tells me everything I need to know about what kind of nurse you are. But caring doesn't change the outcome, Sarah said quietly. Tommy is still what, Sarah? Marcus asked gently when she trailed off. Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself to share the rest of the story. Tommy had the reaction during my shift. The doctors managed to stabilize him, but he's back in critical condition. His parents were so scared, so confused. They kept asking me what went wrong, what they could have done differently, and I didn't have answers for them. But he's alive, Marcus said. You said the doctors stabilized him? For now, Sarah whispered. But his treatment has to be completely revised. The medication that was helping him fight the cancer nearly killed him today. His parents are talking about taking him to another hospital, getting different doctors. They've lost faith in the whole team, including me. Marcus felt the weight of Sarah's burden settling over both of them. This wasn't just about a bad day at work. This was about a young woman questioning everything she believed about her purpose in life. The rain began to lighten as Marcus processed what Sarah had told him. He found himself thinking about the pediatric wing at the hospital where he worked, wondering if he'd ever seen her during his early morning maintenance rounds. The hospital was huge, with hundreds of employees, but something about her felt familiar. Sarah, Marcus said slowly. Which hospital do you work at? Children's Memorial downtown, she replied. Why? Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. I work there too. Maintenance department. I usually start my rounds in pediatrics around 6 a.m. Sarah looked at him more closely and suddenly her eyes widened with recognition. Wait, you're the maintenance guy who always waves at the kids through their windows, the one who draws smiley faces on the glass when you clean it. Guilty as charged, Marcus said with a small smile. I started doing that after Emma told me that being in the hospital must be scary for kids. She suggested I try to make them smile. The kids love you, Sarah said, and for the first time since he'd found her, there was genuine warmth in her voice. We have patients who specifically ask when the happy window man is coming around. There's this one little girl, Mia, who saves up knock-knock jokes all week just to tell you through the glass. Mia Rodriguez, Marcus said immediately. 7 years old, broken arm from falling off her bike. She's been in and out for complications with the healing process. You remember her name? Sarah said, surprised. I remember all their names, Marcus replied. Emma made me promise to treat every child in that hospital like they were her. She said that's what good dads do. They take care of all the kids who need taking care of. Sarah stared at him for a long moment. Your 8-year-old daughter? Said that? Emma's pretty wise for her age. Having to grow up fast does that to a kid. Marcus paused, then added, She also said something else that might be relevant to what you're going through right now. What's that? She told me that sometimes when people are really sick, God needs extra helpers to take care of them. She said, nurses are like angels who work in hospitals instead of in heaven. Marcus smiled at the memory. According to Emma, angels don't always save everyone, but they make sure nobody has to be scared or sad alone. Fresh tears began streaming down Sarah's face, but these were different, softer somehow. She really said that? She did. She also said that when angels feel sad about not being able to save someone, it just means their hearts are working right. Marcus shifted to face Sarah more directly. I think my 8-year-old daughter might understand something about your job that you're forgetting right now. Which is? That your job isn't to be perfect. Your job is to care, to try your best, and to make sure that families going through the worst experience of their lives know that someone is fighting alongside them. Sarah wiped her eyes with her sleeve. I don't feel much like an angel right now. I bet Tommy's parents would disagree with that, Marcus said gently. Tell me something. During the weeks you've been caring for Tommy, how many times did you stay late to check on him? How many times did you explain procedures to his parents when the doctors were too busy? How many times did you advocate for his comfort when he was in pain? Sarah thought about it. I don't know. I just did what needed to be done. That's exactly my point, Marcus said. You did what needed to be done, even when it wasn't officially your job, even when you weren't getting paid extra for it, even when it meant sacrificing your own time and energy. That's not something you can teach someone. That comes from the heart. But it wasn't enough, Sarah whispered. Says who? Marcus challenged. Sarah, think about this logically for a minute. Tommy had a bad reaction to medication. That's a known risk with cancer treatment, isn't it? The doctors and pharmacists calculated the dosage, not you. The medication was approved by oncologists who specialize in pediatric cancer, not you. Tommy's body reacted unexpectedly to a treatment that was designed to save his life. How is any of that your fault? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, considering his words. I guess I've been so focused on feeling responsible for everything that goes wrong, I forgot that I'm just one person on a team of people trying to help. Exactly. And from what I've observed during my morning rounds, you're a pretty important person on that team. Marcus pulled out his phone to check the time, then looked back at Sarah. Can I ask you something? Sure. What made you want to be a pediatric nurse in the first place? Sarah smiled for the first time since he'd found her. My little brother. He was born when I was 16 with a heart defect. Spent the first year of his life in and out of the hospital. I watched the nurses take care of not just him but my whole family. They explained things to my parents when the doctors used words we didn't understand. They held my mom when she cried. They celebrated with us when he hit milestones. They made the scariest time in our lives bearable. And where is your brother now? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer from the joy in her voice. He just started 2nd grade. He plays soccer, rides his bike, drives my parents crazy with his endless questions about everything. He's completely healthy and has no memory of those early hospital stays. Sarah's smile grew wider. He wants to be a doctor when he grows up, because he says doctors and nurses are superheroes who save people. Sounds like those nurses succeeded in their mission, Marcus observed. They did more than save his life, Sarah said, understanding dawning in her voice. They saved our whole family from falling apart during the crisis. They gave us hope when we didn't think we had any left. And now you're doing the same thing for other families, Marcus pointed out. Tommy's parents may be scared right now, and they may need to explore other options for his treatment. But I guarantee you they'll never forget the nurse who fought for their son, who treated him like he was her own family. Sarah looked at Marcus with newfound appreciation. How did you get so wise about all this? You're not just a maintenance worker, are you? Marcus laughed. I really am just a maintenance worker, and a warehouse employee, and a single dad who's doing his best to raise a daughter who sees the good in people. He stood up and offered Sarah his hand. But I've also learned that wisdom doesn't come from degrees or job titles. It comes from paying attention to life and caring about the people around you. Sarah accepted his hand and stood up beside him. The rain had stopped completely, now, and the parking lot lights reflected off the wet pavement like stars. As they stood together in the now quiet parking lot, Sarah seemed to be gathering courage for something. She looked at Marcus with an expression that was part gratitude, part uncertainty, and part fear. Marcus, there's something else I need to tell you, she said quietly. Something I haven't told anyone at the hospital, not even my supervisor. Marcus waited patiently, recognizing the tone of someone who was about to share something deeply personal. The reason Tommy's situation hit me so hard isn't just because I care about my patients, Sarah continued, her voice barely above a whisper. It's because I lost a patient before, a little girl named Lily. It was 2 years ago at my previous hospital. The weight of this revelation settled between them. Marcus understood now why Sarah's guilt seemed so overwhelming, why she was questioning everything about her career and her abilities. What happened with Lily? He asked gently. Sarah took a shaky breath. She was 6 years old, admitted for what should have been routine surgery to remove her appendix. Everything went perfectly in the operating room. I was assigned to her post-op recovery. She was such a bright, funny kid. She kept telling me jokes and asking if I had any kids of my own. Sarah paused, lost in the memory. The surgery was on a Friday afternoon. Lily was supposed to go home on Sunday. Her parents had brought her favorite stuffed animal and books to read together. They were so relieved that the worst was over. But something went wrong, Marcus said softly. Saturday night, during my shift, Lily developed complications. Her blood pressure dropped suddenly and she started having trouble breathing. I called the on-call physician immediately, but he was delayed with an emergency in the ER. I did everything I could, followed every protocol, administered the medications I was authorized to give, monitored her vitals constantly. Sarah's hands were shaking now as she relived that night. But it wasn't enough. By the time the doctor arrived, Lily was in cardiac arrest. We tried to resuscitate her for over an hour. Her parents stood outside the room holding each other, trusting that we would bring their baby back to them. Marcus felt his heart breaking for both Sarah and for Lily's family. Sarah, I'm so sorry. She died at 3:17 a.m., Sarah continued, her voice mechanical now, as if reciting facts helped her get through the telling. The autopsy later showed that she had a rare allergic reaction to one of the post-surgical medications, something that occurs in less than 1% of patients, something that couldn't have been predicted or prevented. But you blamed yourself. Anyway, Marcus said, understanding flooding over him. How could I not? I was her nurse. I was responsible for watching for complications. Maybe if I had noticed something sooner. Maybe if I had pushed harder for the doctor to come immediately. Maybe if I had. Sarah trailed off, the familiar spiral of self-blame taking over. Sarah, stop, Marcus said firmly. You just said it, yourself. This was a rare allergic reaction that couldn't have been predicted or prevented. You followed protocol. You called for help. You did everything right. But she still died on my watch, Sarah whispered. And her parents. The look in their eyes when we had to tell them. I'll never forget it. They trusted me to keep their daughter safe, and I failed them. Marcus was beginning to understand the true depth of Sarah's pain. This wasn't just about Tommy's reaction to his medication. This was about a young nurse carrying the weight of a tragedy that was never her fault to begin with. What did you do after Lily died? He asked. I took a leave of absence, went home to my parents for a month. I was going to quit nursing altogether, but my brother, the one I told you about who had the heart problems as a baby, He convinced me not to. What did he say? Sarah smiled sadly at the memory. He was only 15 at the time, but he sat me down and asked me if I thought the nurses who took care of him when he was little should have quit after any patient they couldn't save. He reminded me about this one nurse, Janet, who had been especially kind to our family. He said he'd heard from my mom that Janet had lost a patient around the same time she was caring for him. Smart kid, Marcus observed. He said something that stuck with me. Sarah, if Nurse Janet had quit because she was sad about not saving someone, then she wouldn't have been there to help save me. Maybe the reason you couldn't save Lily is because you needed to be available to save someone else who really needs you. Marcus felt chills hearing those words from a 15-year-old. So you went back to nursing? I did, but I transferred to a different hospital and requested pediatric oncology specifically. I thought that if I was working with children who were already fighting for their lives, it would be different. The families would understand that not every battle can be won. Sarah shook her head. But it hasn't been different. Every child I lose, every setback like Tommy's, it all brings me right back to that night with Lily. Sarah, Marcus said carefully, have you ever talked to anyone professionally about what happened? A counselor or therapist? My supervisor. At the time recommended it, but I was too ashamed. I felt like admitting I needed help would prove that I wasn't cut out for nursing. Sarah looked down at her hands. I know that sounds stupid now. It doesn't sound stupid. It sounds human, Marcus replied. But carrying this alone for 2 years, that's not helping you or your patients. I know that now, especially after today. When Tommy had his reaction, it was like watching Lily's night all over again. The same helplessness, the same fear in his parents' eyes, the same feeling that I was failing everyone who was counting on me. Marcus was quiet for a moment, processing everything Sarah had shared. Finally, he said, "Can I tell you what I think happened today?" Sarah nodded. I think you saw a child in crisis, and instead of just doing your job and nothing more, you threw everything you had into trying to save him. I think you drew on every skill, every instinct, every ounce of caring you possessed because you weren't just thinking about Tommy. You were thinking about Lily, too. You were determined not to lose another child on your watch. But that's exactly the problem, Sarah protested. I'm so focused on the past that I can't think clearly in the present. Or, Marcus suggested, you're so committed to honoring Lily's memory by being the best nurse you can be that you're holding yourself to impossible standards. Sarah, what would happen if you started thinking about Lily differently? What do you mean? What if instead of seeing her death as your failure, you saw it as her gift to you? What if losing Lily made you more compassionate, more vigilant, more dedicated to the children you care for now? What if her death gave meaning to every life you've been able to touch since then? Sarah stared at Marcus as if he had just spoken in a foreign language. You want me to think of Lily's death as a gift? Not her death, Marcus clarified quickly. Her impact on who you became afterward. Sarah, grief changes us. Loss changes us. But we get to decide whether it makes us bitter or better. I don't understand how losing a 6-year-old could ever be considered a good thing, Sarah said, an edge of defensiveness creeping into her voice. Marcus chose his words carefully. When Emma's mom left us, I was devastated. I felt like a complete failure as a husband and father. For months I was angry at the world, angry at her, angry at myself. I was so focused on what I had lost that I couldn't see what I still had. What changed? Sarah asked. Emma did. One night she found me crying in the kitchen after she'd gone to bed. She was only 3, but she climbed up on my lap and said, "Daddy, are you sad because Mommy went away?" When I nodded, she said, "But, Daddy, now we get to have adventures together, just me and you." Sarah felt her throat tighten at the image of a 3-year-old comforting her heartbroken father. That's when I realized that Emma's mom leaving wasn't just an ending. It was also a beginning. If she had stayed, if our marriage had limped along unhappily, Emma might have grown up thinking that was what love looked like. Instead, she's growing up seeing that sometimes life gives you challenges that make you stronger and more capable than you ever thought possible. But that's different, Sarah protested. Emma's mom chose to leave. Lily didn't choose to die. You're right. It is different. But the principle is the same. We can't change what happened, but we can choose what it means going forward. Marcus paused, then asked, Sarah, how many children have you cared for since Lily died? Sarah thought about it. I don't know exactly. Hundreds, probably. And how many of those children and families were better off because of the nurse you became after losing Lily? The nurse who pays extra attention to post-surgical complications? The nurse who stays late to comfort scared parents? The nurse who fights for her patients like they're her own family? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Considering this perspective she had never allowed herself to explore. I never thought about it that way. I bet Tommy's parents have thought about it that way, even after today's setback, Marcus said. I bet if you asked them they would tell you that having you as Tommy's nurse made the scariest time in their lives more bearable. But what if Tommy doesn't make it? Sarah whispered, voicing her deepest fear. What if I lose him too? Then you'll grieve for him the same way you've grieved for Lily, Marcus said honestly. And it will hurt because you care. But it won't mean you failed him. It will mean you loved him enough to fight for him until the very end. Sarah felt something shifting inside her, like a heavy door that had been locked for 2 years was finally beginning to open. I've been so afraid of losing another patient that I forgot why I became a nurse in the first place, which was to be the person I needed when my family was scared and hurting, Sarah said, the memory of those early hospital days with her brother flooding back. To help families hold on to hope when everything feels hopeless. And have you been that person? Marcus asked. Sarah thought about the families she had worked with over the past 2 years. Mrs. Patterson, whose 4-year-old daughter had brain surgery, and who had hugged Sarah and said she was an angel sent from heaven. The Rodriguez family, whose son had been in a car accident, and who still sent her Christmas cards. Tommy's parents, who had brought her coffee every morning and treated her like family. Yes, she said quietly. I think I have been. Then Lily's legacy lives on through every family you've helped, every child you've comforted, every parent you've supported through their worst nightmare, Marcus said. That doesn't make her death less tragic, but it does make it meaningful. Tears were streaming down Sarah's face again, but these felt different. Cleansing rather than despairing. I miss her so much. I still think about her all the time. Good, Marcus said firmly. You should miss her. You should think about her. That means she mattered to you and that she changed you in ways that will ripple out to touch countless other lives. I just wish I could tell her family that I think about her, that I've tried to honor her memory by being better at my job, Sarah said. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, Maybe you can. What do you mean? Have you ever considered reaching out to them? Not to reopen old wounds, but to let them know that Lily's impact on your life has made you a better nurse for other children? Sarah looked shocked. I couldn't do that. What if it makes their grief worse? What if they blame me for what happened? What if they don't? Marcus countered gently. What if they've been wondering about you too? What if knowing that Lily's death led to better care for other children would bring them some comfort? Sarah had never considered this possibility. In her mind, she was the nurse who had failed their daughter, someone they would want to forget. But what if Marcus was right? What if they had wondered about her, worried about her, hoped that she was okay? I don't know if I'm brave enough for that, Sarah admitted. You don't have to decide tonight, Marcus said. But maybe something to think about as you move forward. They stood in comfortable silence for a few moments, both processing the weight of everything that had been shared. Finally, Sarah said, Marcus, I need to ask you something. Anything. Why did you stop to help me tonight? Most people would have just kept walking. Marcus smiled. Because 5 years ago, when Emma's mom left and I was falling apart, a stranger sat with me in a different parking lot and listened to me pour out my heart. She didn't try to fix everything or give me easy answers. She just reminded me that I wasn't alone and that sometimes the worst moments in our lives are actually doorways to becoming who we're meant to be. What happened to her? The woman who helped you, Sarah asked, I never saw her again. I don't even know her name. But her kindness changed the trajectory of my life and Emma's. She showed me that sometimes being helped by a stranger teaches you how to help strangers. Marcus looked at Sarah meaningfully. Tonight you needed someone to sit with you in the rain. 5 years from now, maybe you'll be the one sitting with someone else who's falling apart, helping them see that their pain can have purpose. Sarah felt a profound shift happening inside her. The crushing weight of guilt she'd been carrying for 2 years wasn't disappearing entirely, but it was transforming into something else. A sense of responsibility, yes, but also a sense of mission. I want to go back to the hospital, she said suddenly. Tonight? Marcus asked, surprised. Not to work. Just to check on Tommy. To be there for his parents. Even if they decide to transfer him to another hospital. Even if they've lost faith in the medical team. I want them to know that someone who cares about their son will be there. Sarah paused, then added, and I think I want to call that counselor my old supervisor recommended. It's time to stop carrying this alone. Marcus felt a surge of pride and hope for this brave young woman who had somehow found her way back to her purpose in the middle of a parking lot during a thunderstorm. That sounds like exactly the right thing to do. Will you walk with me to my car? Sarah asked. I'm parked on the other side of the lot. Of course, Marcus said. But first I need to go get Emma. She's probably wondering if I got abducted by aliens or something. As they walked toward the community center where Emma was waiting, Sarah said, Marcus, can I ask you something else? Sure. Would you mind if I met Emma sometime? I'd like to thank her for having such a wise dad and for teaching him how to help people like me. Marcus grinned. She would love that, and I have a feeling you two would get along great. She's always asking me about the nurses at the hospital and whether they're taking good care of themselves while they take care of everyone else. She sounds amazing. She is. She's also probably going to ask you about 100 questions about what it's like to be a nurse because lately she's been saying she wants to be a nurse when she grows up so she can help sick kids feel better. Sarah felt her heart swell. Maybe I could arrange for her to visit the pediatric unit sometime, show her what nurses really do. If that's okay with you. That would be incredible, Marcus said. She would be over the moon. As they reached the community center, Sarah could see through the windows that Emma was indeed helping Mrs. Rodriguez with some of the younger children, reading them a story while they waited for their parents. She was a beautiful little girl with her father's kind eyes and an animated way of storytelling that had her young audience completely captivated. She's going to be an amazing nurse someday, if that's what she chooses, Sarah said, watching Emma through the window. She's going to be amazing at whatever she chooses, Marcus replied with the quiet confidence of a father who knew his daughter's heart. But I think she'd be especially good at nursing. She has this gift for making people feel better just by being around them. Sarah smiled. I wonder where she gets that from. Marcus looked at her with surprise. What do you mean? Marcus, you found me at my lowest point tonight and somehow helped me remember who I am and why I do what I do. You helped me see that my worst failure might actually be the source of my greatest strength. That's not a common gift. Before Marcus could respond, Emma spotted him through the window and came running outside. Daddy, Mrs. Rodriguez said you had an emergency. Is everything okay? Everything's fine now, sweetheart, Marcus said, scooping Emma into a hug. Emma, I'd like you to meet my friend Sarah. She's a nurse at the hospital where I work. Emma's eyes lit up with interest and excitement. Really? You take care of sick kids? I do, Sarah said, kneeling down to Emma's level. And your dad tells me you might want to be a nurse someday too. Maybe, Emma said, suddenly shy. Daddy says nurses are like angels who work in hospitals instead of heaven. Sarah shot Marcus a look of surprise and delight. Your daddy is very wise. And you know what? I think he might be right about that angel thing. Do you like being a nurse? Emma asked with the directness that only children possess. Sarah considered the question seriously. You know what, Emma? Sometimes being a nurse is the hardest job in the world. Sometimes kids get sicker instead of better, and that makes me very sad. But other times I get to help families through scary times, and I get to be there when children get well enough to go home. Those moments make all the hard parts worth it." Emma nodded solemnly as if she understood more than her 8 years should allow. "Daddy says that the best jobs are the ones that matter, even when they're hard." "Your daddy is right about a lot of things," Sarah said, standing back up and meeting Marcus's eyes with a look of gratitude and newfound hope. 3 weeks later, Marcus was making his usual morning rounds in the pediatric wing when he noticed something different in room 314. Tommy Chen was sitting up in bed, completely bald from his chemotherapy but with bright, alert eyes. His parents sat on either side of his bed, and standing near the window, adjusting the blinds to let in the morning sunshine, was Sarah. "Marcus," Tommy called out, recognizing him from his previous window visits. "Look, I can sit up by myself today." "That's fantastic, Tommy," Marcus said, stepping into the room. "You're looking much stronger than the last time I saw you." Sarah turned from the window with a smile that Marcus barely recognized. Gone was the haunted, guilt-ridden expression he remembered from that rainy night. In its place was something peaceful, purposeful, and genuinely joyful. "Good morning, Marcus," she said warmly. "Tommy was just telling me he's been saving up jokes to tell you through the window, but since you're here in person, maybe he could tell you one now." Tommy's face lit up with excitement. Okay, here's a good one. Why did the cookie go to the doctor?" "I don't know. Why?" Marcus asked, playing along with enthusiasm. "Because it felt crumbly," Tommy announced, dissolving into giggles at his own joke. "That's terrible," Marcus said with a grin. "I love it." Tommy's mother, Mrs. Chen, looked up at Marcus with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Thompson, I don't know if Sarah told you, but Tommy's new treatment protocol is working beautifully. The doctors are very optimistic about his prognosis." "That's wonderful news," Marcus said, genuinely happy for the family. "And it's all thanks to Sarah," Mr. Chen added. "When we were considering transferring Tommy to another hospital after his reaction, Sarah spent hours with us, explaining all our options, helping us understand the new treatment plan, and advocating for us with the medical team. She never made us feel like we were being difficult or unreasonable for wanting a second opinion." Sarah looked slightly embarrassed by the praise. "I just did what any nurse would do." "No, you didn't," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "You went above and beyond. You called specialists at other hospitals to get their input on Tommy's case. You arranged for us to speak with families who had been through similar situations. You stayed with us during that first night when we were so scared about the new medications. You made us feel like Tommy wasn't just another patient to you," Mr. Chen added. "You made us feel like he was your own family." Marcus caught Sarah's eye, and they shared a look of understanding. She had found her way back to being the nurse her brother had inspired her to become. The nurse who saw beyond the medical condition to the scared family that needed support and advocacy. After chatting with Tommy for a few more minutes and promising to continue the window wave visits, Marcus stepped out of the room with Sarah. "He's doing really well," Sarah said as they walked down the hallway together. "And so are you," Marcus observed. "You look different, happier." Sarah smiled. "I feel different. That conversation we had in the parking lot changed everything for me. I started seeing a counselor the very next week." "How's that going?" "It's hard work, but good work. I'm learning to separate my genuine care for my patients from the unhealthy guilt I've been carrying. And I'm learning that Lily's death doesn't have to define my career. It can inform it instead." They paused near the nurses' station where several of Sarah's colleagues waved good morning to both of them. "There's something else," Sarah said, lowering her voice slightly. "I reached out to Lily's parents." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. "You did? How did that go?" "It was scary at first. I wrote them a letter explaining that I thought about Lily often and that losing her had made me a more dedicated nurse to other children. I wasn't sure if I should send it, but my counselor encouraged me to trust my instincts." "What happened?" Sarah's eyes filled with happy tears. "They wrote back. They said they had wondered about me too, worried that I blamed myself for what happened. They told me that they never blamed me, that they knew I had done everything possible to save Lily. and they said that knowing her death had led to better care for other children brought them comfort. That's incredible, Sarah. They asked if I would be willing to meet them sometime just to talk about Lily and share memories of her. They said it would mean a lot to them to know that someone else remembered her and thought about her. Sarah wiped her eyes. We're having coffee next weekend. Marcus felt overwhelming pride for this brave woman who had turned her deepest pain into a source of healing, both for herself and for others. There's more, Sarah continued, her excitement growing. I talked to my supervisor about starting a support group for healthcare workers who have lost patients. She loved the idea and gave me approval to develop a program. We're partnering with the hospital's employee assistance program to offer counseling and peer support. Sarah, that's amazing. How many people do you think you'll be able to help? I don't know, but I hope it's a lot. I've realized that almost every nurse, doctor, and healthcare worker I know has a Lily story, a patient they couldn't save who haunts them. We all carry this guilt alone, and we don't have to. Marcus shook his head in wonder. 3 weeks ago, you were sitting in the rain convinced you should quit nursing. Now you're creating programs to help other healthcare workers heal. That's quite a transformation. I had a good teacher, Sarah said with a meaningful smile. Someone who helped me see that my worst moment could become my greatest source of strength. Emma's going to be so excited to hear about Tommy, Marcus said. She asks about him every day. Speaking of Emma, are you still okay with her visiting the unit next week? I've arranged for her to shadow me for a few hours, see what nursing is really like. She's been counting down the days, Marcus laughed. She's already practicing her bedside manner on her stuffed animals. She's going to be a natural, Sarah said. Kids with that kind of empathy and courage usually are. As they reached the end of Marcus's maintenance route, Sarah said, Marcus, can I ask you something? Always. That woman who helped you 5 years ago, the one who sat with you when Emma's mom left, do you think she knows what impact she had on your life? Marcus considered this. Probably not, but that's okay. I think the best kind of help is the kind you give without expecting anything in return, without even knowing if it worked. I want to be that kind of person, Sarah said quietly. Not just as a nurse, but as a human being. I think you already are, Marcus replied. Tommy's family certainly thinks so, and I suspect that support group you're starting is going to help more people than you can imagine. As Sarah headed back to check on her patients, and Marcus continued. With his morning rounds, both of them carried with them the quiet satisfaction of lives that had been transformed by a simple act of kindness on a rainy night. That evening, as Marcus tucked Emma into bed, she asked her usual question. Daddy, did you see any sick kids today who needed extra smiles? I did, Marcus said, sitting on the edge of her bed. I saw Tommy, the little boy I told you about. He's getting much better, and he told me a joke that I think you'd like. Emma giggled as Marcus repeated Tommy's cookie joke. Then she grew more serious. Daddy, is Nurse Sarah happy now? You said she was very sad when you met her. She's much happier now, sweetheart. She remembered why she loves being a nurse, and she's helping other nurses who were feeling sad too. Good, Emma said with satisfaction. I knew you would help her feel better. You're good at helping people remember the good things about themselves. As Marcus turned off Emma's light and kissed her goodnight, he reflected on how much had changed since that rainy evening 3 weeks ago. A chance encounter with a crying nurse had reminded him that kindness has a ripple effect, that helping one person heal can ultimately touch countless other lives. In the pediatric wing of the hospital, Sarah was finishing her shift, checking on each of her young patients one last time. As she said goodnight to Tommy, who was sleeping peacefully with his favorite stuffed animal, she thought about Lily and felt for the first time in 2 years that she was honoring her memory in exactly the right way. Sometimes the most meaningful connections happen in the most unexpected moments between strangers who become exactly what the other person needs at exactly the right time. And sometimes those connections create ripples of healing that spread far beyond what either person could have imagined on a rainy night in a parking lot, when one person's willingness to stop and care changed 2 lives forever.